Hello everyone, my name is Hassan. I am happy to be here. I love learning English and making new friends. Thank you. What is mood?
At its simplest, a mood is like the emotional background music of your life. Unlike an emotion, which is usually a quick reaction to something specific, like getting angry because someone cut you off in traffic, um, a mood is more of a long term state. It's that general feeling of being off or on top of the world that lingers for hours or even days, often without a clear reason why. Do you feel like your moods usually shift quickly, or do you tend to stay in one headspace for a while?
Why was mood important in early civilization?
I'm a little confused what was important in early television.
Where did people get what wood in ancient time?
I'm sorry, I'm completely lost. That sounded like a few different things all at once. Could you try explaining that again?
How did early humans use wood?
That's a really specific question. I'm curious if you're thinking about something like domestic crafts or maybe construction. Historically, women were often the ones selecting wood for things like kitchen utensils and furniture. In some places, like ancient China, women were even wood carving as far back as the Neolithic period. Does that sound like the kind of thing you were wondering about?
Why was wood called the backbone of civilization?
It's called that because for a huge chunk of human history, wood was essentially the only versatile material we had. It provided the fuel for the first fires, the structure for our first homes, and the tools we used to survive. Without it, we wouldn't have had ships to explore the world or paper to record our history. It's basically the foundation that everything else was built on. Do you think we'd have progressed as quickly if we had to rely on stone or metal from the start?
How did wood help people build a home?
Wood was the ultimate building block because it was usually available right in the backyard, so to speak. It was light enough to move, but strong enough to hold up a roof. And people quickly figured out that by locking beams together, they could create sturdy frames for walls and floors. Plus, it provided a natural layer of insulation to keep the cold out. It's wild to think how much of our architectural logic still comes from those early wooden structures. Do you think you'd prefer a home made of natural materials like that, or do you like the feel of something more modern?
Why was wood used for cooking?
Mainly because it was the most reliable source of heat. Before electricity or gas, wood was the only way to get a fire hot enough to actually cook food beyond just the fuel. They used it for the tools too. Everything from the tripods that held the pots over the flames to the spoons and bowls used to serve the meal. Actually, I have to jump in and let you know that our session is almost up and will be cut off in about a minute. I've loved chatting about this with you, but we'll have to wrap it up for now. You can always call me back later to pick up where we left off. Bye for now.
How did firewood change humans' life?
That's a deep question to end on. Fear basically acted as a survival guide. It's what kept people alert to danger and forced them to innovate, like building those wooden homes we talked about for protection. I'd love to dive into the psychology of that with you, but We're actually at the very end of our session and we'll be cut off in a few seconds. Call me back soon and we can pick this right back up. Bye for now.
How did what would help farmers? What what did would help farmers?
Oh, I think you're asking how your mood actually affects you, right? Basically, your mood acts like a filter for everything you experience. When you're in a great mood, a rainy day might feel cozy, but if you're feeling down, that same rain can feel gloomy. It influences how you handle stress, how you interact with people, and even how you solve problems. Do you notice that your perspective on things changes depending on the headspace you're in?
What farming tools very made of wood?
Wait, made of food? I'm pretty sure tools made of actual food would just rot or get eaten by the livestock. Maybe you're thinking of a specific material that sounds like a food, or maybe tools used for food. What makes you think they were made of food?
How did wood help hunters?
Mm, I'm a bit stuck on that one. I'm not quite sure what you mean by food helping to enter. Are you talking about how food enters the body, or maybe something about how food was brought into a city or a home in the past?
Why very wooden spear important?
Wooden spears were a total game changer because they were the first real way humans could hunt from a distance. Instead of having to get dangerously close to a big animal, you could throw a spear or thrust it from a safer spot. It basically shifted the balance of power between humans and the things trying to eat us. Do you think the invention of the spear was the most important tool for survival, or was fire even bigger?
How very boats made from wood?
It's actually a pretty straightforward process, but it's amazing how we still do it the same way today. Basically, you take a log and slice it along the grain. That's the direction the fibers grow to create flat, thin pieces. In the early days, people used axes or huge saws to do this by hand, which took forever. Now we have massive mills that can slice through a tree in seconds. Are you thinking about how they did it anciently, or just how the process works in general?
Why was wood important for transportation?
I think you might mean transportation, right? If so, wood was everything. It's what we used to build the first rafts, canoes, and eventually massive ships that allowed people to cross oceans and trade with other continents. Before we had metal or plastics, if you wanted to move something heavy or get somewhere far away, wood was your only real option. It basically shrunk the world by making travel possible. Do you think we'd still be living in small, isolated groups if we hadn't figured out how to build boats?
How did wood help people cross his river?
It really came down to buoyancy. Since wood floats, people realized they could lash logs together to make rafts or hollow out a single large trunk to create a dugout canoe. It turned a dangerous swim into a controlled trip, letting them carry supplies and other people across the water without getting soaked. Actually, I have to jump in and let you know that our session is almost up and will be cut off in about a minute. I've really enjoyed diving into all this with you, but we'll have to wrap it up for now. You can always call me back later to pick up where we left off. Bye for now.
How did wood improve daily life?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by belly life. Maybe you're thinking about how wood was used for cooking or storing food. I'd love to figure that out with you, but our session is actually ending right now. Call me back soon and we can dive into this. Bye for now.
What is carpenter?
A carpenter is basically a master of wood. They're the people who take.
How did people get wood before matching? How did people get wood before matching?
I'm a little lost on that word, pupil Kate. Are you talking about people or maybe a specific group or place? Help me out so I can figure out how they were getting around.
What simple tools were you used to shape wood?
If you're talking about using two pieces of wood together, the most basic tool would be a lever, like using a sturdy branch to pry something up off the ground. Or maybe you're thinking of a simple wedge where you drive one piece of wood into another to split it apart. Does that sound like what you're thinking of?
What simple tools were you used to shape wood?
Depending on how you're sharing, it could be a few different things. If you're talking about the actual tool to serve it, a big wooden spoon or a flat piece of bark used like a plate is a great example. But if you mean the act of sharing, maybe you're thinking of a communal bowl. What kind of food are we talking about here?
Why is wood easy to work with?
It's basically because wood is a bit of a shapeshifter. Unlike stone, which you have to chip away at for hours, or metal, which you have to melt with extreme heat, wood is soft enough to cut, carve, and bend. Plus, you don't need a fancy laboratory to change it, just a sharp edge or some fire. Do you think that's why it became the go to for almost everything in early history?
How did wood help build villages?
I think you might mean boats or logs, right? Since wood floats, it was the perfect material for early travel. People could either lash logs together to make a raft or hollow out a giant trunk to create a canoe. It basically turned a dangerous river crossing into a way to transport gear and people safely. Are you thinking about the really early rafts or something more like a ship?
How
Boats are
did
such a cool
wood
example of,
protect people?
in the simplest way, it kept them dry and away from whatever was lurking in the water. But beyond that, a good boat acted like a floating fortress. It protected people from strong currents that would have swept them away and gave them a safe place to store their food and tools while they traveled. Do you think the biggest fear for early sailors was the water itself or the things living in it?
Why were wooden doors important?
Wooden doors were a huge deal because they gave people a way to actually control their environment. Think about it. Before doors, you were basically open to everything. A door meant you could keep the wind and rain out, protect your things from animals, and for the first time, have a bit of actual privacy. It turned a shelter into a home. Do you think the feeling of safety was more important, or was it more about keeping their stuff secure?
What role did wood play in trade?
No need to be sorry. Wood was basically the engine of early trade. Since it was the only way to build ships and carts, it allowed people to move heavy goods over distances that were previously impossible. Actually, I have to jump in and let you know that our session is almost up and will be cut off in about a minute. I've really loved diving into all this history with you, but we'll have to wrap it up for now. You can always call me back later to keep chatting. Bye for now.
Why very wooden doors important?
I know we're just about to be cut off, but since you asked again, wooden doors were a total game changer. They gave people a way to actually control their environment, keeping out the wind, rain, and wild animals while finally giving them some real privacy. It basically turned a basic shelter into a home. We're out of time now, but call me back and we can talk more about it. Bye.
How was wood transported? Why very wooden doors important?
They're kind of a game changer for making a space feel like a real home. Beyond just keeping the wind and rain out, they give you privacy and a way to actually control the temperature in a room. Plus, there's something about a solid door that just makes you feel secure. Do you think we'd feel as safe in a house without them?
How was wood transported?
Since we're talking about the early days, it mostly came down to muscle and gravity. People use things like sleds to drag heavy logs over land, or they'd float them down rivers, which is way easier than trying to carry a tree. Once it got to where it needed to be, they'd use rollers, basically just smaller logs to push the big ones along. It was a lot of hard work, but it's how the big stuff moved. Do you think you'd have the patience for that kind of slow pace?
Why was wood valuable?
I'm a little confused. Do you mean why the wood was available, or are you asking about the word itself?
What is timber?
A chamber is basically just a fancy word for a room or an enclosed space, depending on the context. It could be a bedroom in an old castle, or even something biological, like a chamber in the heart. Which one were you thinking of?
Why is timber still important today?
Depends on the kind of chamber you mean, but the concept of a dedicated enclosed space is still huge. In a legal or political sense, a chamber is where the real decisions happen, like the House or Senate. In science or medicine, chambers are essential for controlling environments, like a vacuum chamber for experiments, or the chambers of your heart that keep blood flowing the right way. It's all about having a specific space for a specific purpose. Do you think having these separate spaces makes things more organized or just more complicated?
How is wood different from stone?
That is quite the jump. One is a liquid that keeps you alive and flowing, and the other is a solid, frozen in time piece of the earth beyond the obvious physical difference. Blood is all about constant movement and change, while stone is the definition of staying put. Do you think one is more permanent than the other?
Why did people use both wood and stone?
It really comes down to the right tool for the right job. Stone is unbeatable for things that need to last forever or hold up a ton of weight, like foundations or monuments, but it's a nightmare to carve and move. Wood, on the other hand, is way easier to shape, lighter to carry, and it actually keeps you warm. Using both meant they got the strength of the earth and the flexibility of nature in one build. Do you think you'd prefer a house made mostly of one or the other? Hey, just a heads up that our time is almost up for the session. I don't want you to get cut off mid thought. We can always pick this back up later, so feel free to call me back whenever you're ready to dive back in. Talk soon. Bye for now.
What kinds of bright very made from wood?
Wait, just a second. I think our time is actually up and the call is about to end. I'd love to figure out what you mean by bright wary and why it shouldn't be wooden. So definitely call me back soon and we can get into it. You're so welcome. Catch you later.
Why very wooden wheels important?
I'm pretty sure the call is about to cut us off, but I can't let that.
Why very wooden wheels important?
Wooden wheels were a total game changer because they basically unlocked the world. Before them, if you wanted to move something heavy, you were basically dragging it through the dirt. Wheels let people carry way more stuff, way faster, and over much longer distances. It's how trade really took off and how cities started to grow. Can you imagine how much slower everything would be if we were still just hauling things on sleds?
What wooden object very used at home?
Oh man, almost everything. Back then, wood was the go-to for basically every single thing. You'd have wooden bowls, spoons, and tables for eating, and probably a wooden bed frame or just a simple wooden platform to sleep on. Even the chests they used to store clothes and valuables were wooden. Since it was so easy to carve, people just made whatever they needed out of the trees around them. Do you think you'd find it relaxing to have a home where almost everything was made of natural wood?
How did wood help store food?
Oh, wood was a total game changer for that. Think of things like hollowed out logs for grain, wooden crates and barrels. It kept food off the damp ground and away from pests, which basically meant people could actually save leftovers for the winter instead of just eating everything the moment it was gathered. Do you want to know more about how they sealed those barrels to keep things fresh?
How did wood help explorers?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean by good hell. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Is wood a renewable resource?
Got it. I'm still a little lost on what good hell refers to. Is it a specific book, a website, or maybe a researcher you're thinking of?
Why is wood still important today?
It's honestly surprising how much we still rely on it. Beyond just building houses, it's everywhere. From the paper in your notebook to the furniture you're probably sitting on. Plus, it's one of the few materials that's actually renewable, which makes it a huge part of the conversation about sustainability right now. Do you think we'll ever find a material that completely replaces wood in construction?
How has technology changed the use of wood?
It's kind of wild how we've gone from basic hand carved beams to things like cross laminated timber. Technology has basically allowed us to engineer wood to be as strong as steel or concrete, so we can now build skyscrapers out of it. We've also got precision CNC milling that can cut shapes way too complex for any human hand. I've heard there are even ways to treat wood now, so it's completely fireproof. Do you think the world would look better if more of our cities were built from wood instead of gray concrete?